Chapter 1. Brenda's World. Brenda Wilcox had a love affair with chaos. At least, the kind that came with bolts of silk, racks of unfinished garments, and the hum of a sewing machine that had seen more late nights than most bartenders. Her studio looked like a war zone where color had staged a coup. Sketches littered the floor like fallen soldiers, and a half-empty latte perched precariously on a stack of fashion magazines. She didn't notice the mess. She never did. Brenda was in the zone, and when Brenda was in the zone, the rest of the world could kindly take a number and wait. Brenda, you've been standing in the same spot for 20 minutes, her assistant, Mia, said, leaning against the doorway with a look that was equal parts admiration and concern. Are you meditating or plotting world domination? Brenda didn't glance up from the sketchpad. Neither. I'm trying to decide if this neckline says, bold and fearless, or please hire me for your gala, because I'm desperate. Mia snorted. You know most people would just pick one and move on. Most people aren't designing for the spring showcase, Brenda replied, her pencil moving in quick, decisive strokes. One wrong line, and the critics will eat me alive. Mia rolled her eyes. You act like they're vampires. They are, Brenda said flatly. Fashion vampires. They suck the confidence out of you and leave you questioning every life choice you've ever made. Mia laughed, but Brenda didn't join in. She was already lost in the sketch again, her brow furrowed in concentration. This was Brenda Wilcox in her natural habitat, laser-focused, relentless, and completely oblivious to the fact that the rest of the world existed. By the time she finally looked up, the clock on the wall was mocking her with its smug little hands. 7:45 p.m. She had promised herself she'd leave by 6. She always promised herself that. She never did. Her phone buzzed on the work table, screen lighting up with a name that made her smile without thinking, Kevin Jameson. She swiped to answer. Hey, Kev. Still at the studio? His voice was warm, familiar, the kind of voice that could make a person forget they were drowning in deadlines. Where else would I be? Brenda said, grabbing her latte and grimacing when she realized it was cold. I'm married to this place. You know, most marriages involve two people, Kevin teased. And at least one date night. Brenda smirked. You volunteering? Always, he said easily. But I'm guessing you're going to say no. You know me too well, Brenda replied, flipping through her sketches. I've got 3 gowns to finish before Monday. If I leave now, I'll dream about unfinished hems and wake up in a cold sweat. Kevin chuckled. Sounds romantic. Don't mock my pain, Brenda said, though her lips curved into a smile. What are you up to? Just finished dinner, he said. Thought I'd check in before you forget what human voices sound like. Brenda laughed softly. You're my only social life, Kev. If you stop calling, I'll start talking to mannequins. Pretty sure they'd listen better than you, he said, and she could hear the grin in his voice. Anyway, I'll let you get back to your fashion vampires. Thanks, Brenda said, and for a moment, she felt that familiar comfort, the kind that came from knowing Kevin was always there, steady as a heartbeat. Talk soon. Always, he said again, and then the line went dead. Brenda stared at her phone for a long moment before setting it down. She didn't think about why his voice lingered in her head like a favorite song. She never did. Feelings were messy, unpredictable, and Brenda didn't do unpredictable. She did plans. She did goals. She did control. Love? Love could wait. Chapter 2. The invitation. The envelope was elegant, cream with a gold embossed border, the kind that whispered money and good taste. Brenda almost tossed it aside, assuming it was another gala invite or a pretentious fashion mixer. But then she saw the handwriting. Familiar. Steady. Kevin's. Her stomach did a strange flip. She slid a manicured nail under the flap and pulled out the card. The words were simple, beautiful, and devastating all at once. Kevin Jameson and Lexi Hart request the honor of your presence at their wedding. Brenda read it twice, then a third time, because surely her eyes were lying. Kevin. Wedding. Lexi Hart. Who the hell was Lexi Hart? The card trembled in her hand. She sat down hard on the nearest chair, which happened to be covered in sequins. They clung to her skirt like glittery parasites, but she didn't notice. Her brain was busy short-circuiting. Kevin was getting married. Kevin. Her Kevin. The guy who knew her coffee order better than her own assistant. The guy who never flinched when she canceled plans for work. The guy who had been her constant in a world that spun too fast. She had assumed. No, she had known. That Kevin would always be there. Waiting. Like a book on a shelf she could pick up when she finally had time to read. Apparently, someone else had checked him out. Brenda stared at the invitation until the letters blurred. Then she laughed. A sharp, humorless sound that startled Mia, who had just walked in with a garment bag. Did the sketch finally tell a joke? Mia asked, eyeing Brenda like she might be having a breakdown. Brenda held up the card. Kevin's getting married. Mia blinked. Kevin as in your Kevin? Brenda's jaw tightened. He's not my Kevin. Sure, Mia said slowly, like she was talking to a wild animal. And I'm not addicted to iced coffee. Brenda ignored the jab. He never said a word. Not one. We talk all the time. Do you? Mia asked, dropping the garment bag on a chair. Or do you talk and he listens? Brenda opened her mouth to argue, then shut it. Because, damn it, Mia had a point. Her phone buzzed again. Kevin. Because of course the universe had a sense of humor. She answered, voice tight. Hey. Brenda. Kevin said warmly, oblivious to the storm brewing on her end. Did you get something in the mail? Oh, you mean the bombshell? Brenda snapped before she could stop herself. There was a pause. So you got the invitation. Got it. I practically inhaled it. She said, pacing now. Kevin, you're getting married? To Lexi? Who is Lexi? When did this happen? Kevin's tone stayed calm, maddeningly calm. Brenda, my love life isn't exactly breaking news. It's just not something I talked about. Not something you. Kevin, we've had coffee every week for years. You could have mentioned you were dating someone. You never asked, he said simply. Brenda froze. Excuse me. You never asked, Kevin repeated, gentle but firm. Every time we met, it was about your deadlines, your clients, your latest disaster date. I didn't mind. I like being there for you. But you never gave me space to talk about my life. Brenda felt the words like a slap. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because he was right. She had assumed Kevin's life was an open book she didn't need to read because she already knew the ending. Turns out, she didn't. Kevin. Her voice cracked, and she hated that it did. I thought that I'd wait forever. His tone wasn't cruel. It was soft, almost sad. Brenda, I care about you. Always will. But I couldn't keep putting my life on hold. Brenda gripped the edge of the table like it could anchor her. Right? Of course. You deserve to be happy. I do, he said gently. And so do you. She hung up before her voice betrayed her completely. Brenda stared at the invitation again, the gold letters gleaming like they were mocking her. For the first time in years, she felt something stronger than ambition. Something raw and terrifying. Loss. Chapter 3. Spiral Mode. Brenda Wilcox was not a woman who spiraled. Spiraling was for people who didn't have color-coded calendars and backup plans for their backup plans. Brenda had systems. Brenda had control. Except right now, Brenda had a wedding invitation and a brain that felt like someone had shaken it like a snow globe. She sat on her couch, still in the same silk blouse she'd worn to the studio, staring at the cream and gold card like it might spontaneously combust. Her phone lay beside her, silent now, but the echo of Kevin's voice lingered. You never asked. She hated how true that was. Every coffee meetup, every dinner. They were her monologues with Kevin as the patient audience. She'd vent about clients, gush about fabrics, complain about men who didn't get her schedule. And Kevin? He'd smile, nod, and refill her coffee like the world's most supportive barista. She thought that meant he was happy just being there. Turns out, he was living an entire life she didn't bother to notice. Brenda groaned and flopped back against the cushions. I'm a terrible person. You're not terrible, Mia said from the kitchen, where she was raiding Brenda's snack stash like a raccoon in designer jeans. You're just self-involved. Wow, thanks, Brenda muttered. Mia popped her head around the corner, holding a bag of pretzels. You want brutal honesty or comforting lies? Comforting lies, Brenda said without hesitation. Okay, Mia said, tossing her a pretzel. You're amazing, flawless, and Kevin's fiancé is probably a robot. Brenda caught the pretzel and scowled. Not helping. Fine, Mia said, plopping down next to her. What's the plan? Brenda blinked. Plan? You always have a plan, Mia said. Step 1, freak out. Step 2, fix it. So what's step 2? Brenda stared at the invitation. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm feeling. Jealousy, Mia said without missing a beat. Brenda shot her a look. I am not jealous. Sure, Mia said, crunching a pretzel. And I'm not binge-watching reality TV every night. Brenda opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because the truth was sitting heavy in her chest, and it tasted a lot like regret. She thought about Kevin's laugh, the way it always softened her worst days. The way he never made her feel guilty for canceling plans. The way he looked at her when she was ranting about a client, like she was the most fascinating person in the room. And now he was looking at someone else like that. Brenda pressed the heels of her hands to her eyes. I didn't even know he was dating anyone. Because you never asked, Mia said gently this time. You were too busy assuming he'd wait forever. Brenda winced. God, I sound awful. You sound human, Mia said. But maybe it's time to stop assuming and start. I don't know, talking. Brenda laughed bitterly. What am I supposed to say? Hey, Kev, congrats on the wedding. By the way, I just realized I love you. Can we pencil in a breakup before the big day? Mia shrugged. You're the queen of bold moves. Brenda stared at the invitation again, the gold letters gleaming like a dare. For the first time in years, she felt completely unprepared. No sketches, no strategy, no control. Just a heart she'd ignored for too long, and a clock that was running out. Chapter 4. Coffee Confrontation. Brenda picked the cafe because it was neutral territory, public enough to keep things civil, cozy enough to pretend this wasn't the most awkward meeting of her life. She arrived early, because of course she did, and spent 10 minutes rearranging the sugar packets like they were chess pieces in a game she was losing. When Kevin walked in, the room seemed to tilt. He looked the same. Easy smile, worn leather jacket, that calm energy that had always steadied her. Except now, every detail felt sharper, like her brain was cataloging what she'd taken for granted. Hey, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. His voice was warm, familiar, and Brenda hated how much it hurt. Hey, she echoed, forcing a smile. Thanks for meeting me. Of course, Kevin said, signaling the barista. You want your usual? Brenda blinked. You still remember? Kevin's lips curved. Brenda, I could order your coffee in my sleep. The words landed like a punch. She swallowed hard. Right, thanks. They sat in silence until the coffees arrived. Brenda wrapped her hands around the cup like it could anchor her. Then she took a breath and dove in. So, wedding, she said, aiming for casual and missing by a mile. Kevin chuckled softly. Yeah, wedding. Lexi, Brenda said, the name tasting foreign. She seems great. She is, Kevin said simply, and the quiet pride in his voice made Brenda's stomach twist. How long have you two been? Brenda trailed off, hoping he'd fill in the blank. 2 years, Kevin said. Brenda's head snapped up. 2 years. Kevin nodded, calm as ever. We met at a charity event. Hit it off. The rest happened. Brenda stared at him, words tangling in her throat. 2 years, and you never said a word. Kevin's gaze was steady. Brenda, you never asked. Brenda laughed, sharp, brittle. That's your answer for everything? It's the truth, Kevin said gently. Every time we met, you were in your world. I didn't mind. I know how much your work means to you. But you never gave me space to talk about mine. Brenda felt heat rise in her cheeks. I didn't think I had to. I thought. She stopped, because saying I thought you'd wait for me sounded pathetic even in her head. Kevin's expression softened. You thought I'd always be there. Brenda's throat tightened. Was that so crazy? No, Kevin said quietly. But it wasn't fair to either of us. Brenda gripped her cup, knuckles white. I don't understand why you didn't tell me. Kevin sighed. Because I didn't want to make you feel guilty. You were chasing your dream. I didn't want to be the guy who made you choose. Brenda blinked hard, fighting the sting in her eyes. So you just moved on. I had to, Kevin said, voice gentle but firm. Brenda, I love you. I always have. But I couldn't keep waiting for a day that might never come. The words hit like a freight train. Brenda stared at him, heart pounding, every witty comeback gone. You loved me, she whispered. Kevin smiled sadly. Yeah, for a long time. Brenda's breath caught. And now? Kevin looked down at his coffee, then back at her. Now I love Lexi. She's amazing. She sees me. Brenda swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. I thought I did. Kevin's eyes were kind, but unyielding. You saw the version of me that fit into your schedule. Silence stretched between them, heavy and raw. Brenda wanted to scream, cry, rewind time. But all she could do was sit there, staring at the man who had been her constant, realizing she'd mistaken constancy for permanence. Finally, Kevin reached across the table, his hand warm over hers. You're still my friend, Brenda? Always. Brenda nodded, because her voice was gone. She managed a smile, small, shaky, but real. Always, she whispered back. Chapter 5. Enter Lexi. Brenda had faced fashion critics who could slice a collection to ribbons with a single raised eyebrow. She had survived clients who changed their minds more often than they changed outfits. But nothing prepared her for meeting Lexi Hart. It happened on a Thursday evening at a trendy wine bar, the kind of place where the lighting was flattering and the chairs were designed to make you feel chic and slightly uncomfortable. Kevin had invited her to join a small group for drinks. Casual, he said. No pressure. Which was code for, you're going to meet the woman who is marrying me, so try not to combust. Brenda arrived early, because apparently she enjoyed torturing herself. She ordered a glass of Sauvignon Blanc and rehearsed her smile in the reflection of the wine rack. Friendly, not fake, definitely not murderous. Brenda? The voice was warm, lilting, and when Brenda turned, she saw her, Lexi Hart, in the flesh. Tall, elegant, with the kind of effortless style that made Brenda want to burn half her wardrobe. Her dress was simple, black silk, minimal jewelry, but somehow she looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread titled Women Who Win at Life. Brenda stood so fast, she nearly knocked over her wine. Lexi. Hi. Wow, you're tall. Great start, Brenda. Compliment her height, like you're measuring for curtains. Lexi laughed, a soft, genuine sound. And you must be Brenda. Kevin talks about you all the time. Brenda blinked. He does. What does he say? That I'm a workaholic with commitment issues? That I treat him like a human diary? Lexi smiled. He says you're brilliant. And funny. And that you have the best taste in coffee. Brenda's throat tightened. Oh, well, I do take my caffeine seriously. Kevin arrived then, saving Brenda from drowning in her own awkwardness. Ladies, he said, sliding in between them with that easy grin that used to feel like home. Glad you could both make it. Brenda plastered on her best smile. Wouldn't miss it. Lexi touched Kevin's arm lightly, and Brenda felt something sharp twist in her chest. It wasn't jealousy. Okay, maybe it was jealousy, but mostly it was the realization that Lexi wasn't a villain. She wasn't fake or smug or anything Brenda could hate. She was lovely, warm, the kind of person who probably remembered birthdays and sent thank you notes without being asked. Brenda hated her a little for being perfect. The conversation flowed, mostly between Lexi and Kevin, with Brenda chiming in like an understudy who hadn't learned all her lines. Lexi asked about Brenda's work, genuinely interested, and Brenda tried to sound witty instead of defensive. So you're designing for the spring showcase? Lexi said, eyes bright. That sounds incredible. Brenda shrugged, swirling her wine. It's intense. Lots of late nights. Lots of caffeine. Lexi laughed. Kevin warned me you're unstoppable. Brenda forced a smile. Yeah, that's me. Unstoppable. Inside, she felt anything but. By the time the evening ended, Brenda's cheeks hurt from smiling. She hugged Lexi goodbye, because apparently that was a thing now, and watched as Kevin slipped his arm around Lexi's waist, guiding her out the door like it was the most natural thing in the world. Brenda stood there, clutching her empty wine glass, and thought, this is what losing looks like. And she's beautiful. Chapter 6. The mirror moment. Brenda stared at her reflection like it was a stranger. The woman in the mirror wore confidence like armor. Perfect eyeliner, sleek ponytail, a blouse that screamed, "I have my life together." But tonight, the illusion felt paper thin. She leaned closer, gripping the edge of the vanity. "What are you doing?" she whispered to herself. The question hung in the air, heavy and accusing. Brenda had spent years building a life that made sense. Goals, deadlines, achievements stacked like bricks in a fortress. Safe, predictable, controlled. And yet, one cream and gold envelope had blown a hole straight through it. She sank onto the edge of her bed, kicking off her heels, and let the memories come. Flashback 1. Kevin at that tiny coffee shop near campus, grinning as he slid a latte across the table. "Extra foam. Because you're dramatic like that." She had laughed, tossing her hair, already sketching designs on a napkin. He watched her like she was magic. She never noticed. Flashback 2. Her first big showcase. She was a wreck, fabric delays, models canceling. Kevin showed up with takeout and sat on the floor of her studio, folding programs while she ranted. "You're going to kill it," he said, calm as ever. She believed him because Kevin never lied. Flashback 3. That night she complained about another failed date. Some guy who couldn't handle her schedule. Kevin listened, quiet, his jaw tight. She thought he was angry on her behalf. Now she knew better. Brenda pressed her palms to her eyes, fighting the sting. How many chances had she missed? How many doors had Kevin opened, waiting for her to walk through, while she stayed locked in her own world? She thought about Lexi, graceful, warm, the kind of woman who asked questions and listened to answers. The kind of woman who saw Kevin. Brenda whispered into the empty room. "I thought I had time." The truth was brutal. She didn't. She never did. Life wasn't a calendar you could rearrange when it suited you. People didn't wait forever. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Mia. "Stop brooding. Eat something. And maybe call him before you implode." Brenda stared at the screen, then at her reflection again. For the first time, she saw the cracks in her armor. The loneliness hiding behind ambition. The fear masquerading as control. She whispered to the mirror, "You've been unstoppable for so long. Maybe it's time to stop." Chapter 7. The wedding countdown. 3 months. 90 days. 2,160 hours. Brenda had done the math twice, because apparently heartbreak came with a side of obsessive time calculations. Every tick of the clock felt like a drumbeat, marching her toward the day she'd watch Kevin promise forever to someone else. She tried to drown herself in work. The spring showcase loomed, and her studio buzzed with chaos. Fabric swatches, frantic interns, and Mia wielding a steamer like a weapon. But even as Brenda stitched and sketched, her mind kept wandering to Kevin. To Lexi. To the future she thought was guaranteed, but never claimed. "Brenda, you just sewed the sleeve to the neckline," Mia said, holding up the mangled garment like evidence in a crime scene. Brenda blinked. "What? You're distracted," Mia said, narrowing her eyes. "And don't say it's the fabric. You've been off since wine night with perfect Lexi." Brenda groaned, dropping onto a stool. "She's not perfect." "She's perfect," Mia said. "And you hate it." Brenda buried her face in her hands. "I don't hate her. I hate me." Mia softened. "So what's the plan?" Brenda lifted her head, eyes wild. "Why does everyone think I have a plan?" "Because you always do," Mia said. "And if you don't, that's scarier than the sleeve neckline situation." Brenda stared at the ruined dress, then at the calendar pinned to the wall. Kevin's wedding date circled in red like a bullseye. "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me wants to tell him. Just say it. Before it's too late." "And the other part?" Mia asked. Brenda laughed bitterly. "The other part says it's already too late." That night, Brenda lay in bed scrolling through Kevin's Instagram like a woman possessed. Pictures of him and Lexi at charity events, hiking trails, laughing over brunch. Lexi always looked radiant. Kevin always looked happy. Brenda's chest ached. She thought about all the times he'd asked quiet questions. "Do you ever think about settling down? What's your 5-year plan outside of work?" She'd brushed them off with jokes, too busy chasing deadlines to notice the hope behind his eyes. Now, that hope belonged to someone else. She opened her notes app and stared at the blank screen. Her fingers hovered, then typed. Things I should say to Kevin before the wedding. 1. I'm sorry. 2. I was selfish. 3. I love you. She stared at the words until they blurred. Then she deleted them. Because Brenda Wilcox didn't do messy confessions. She did clean lines, perfect stitches, and plans that never failed. Except this one had. Spectacularly. As midnight crept in, Brenda whispered into the dark. "If I tell him, it's not to break them up. It's just so he knows." The silence didn't answer. But her heart did, pounding like it wanted out of its cage. Chapter 8. The confession. Brenda chose the park because it was quiet, neutral, and far enough from the city noise to make honesty feel possible. The late afternoon sun painted everything gold, and the crisp air smelled faintly of leaves and coffee from the nearby kiosk. She clutched her scarf like it was armor, rehearsing words that sounded brave in her head but felt fragile in her throat. Kevin arrived right on time, because of course he did. He always did. That was Kevin, steady, dependable, the kind of man who showed up even when you didn't deserve it. "Hey," he said, smiling as he approached. That smile still had the power to undo her, and Brenda hated that she'd only just realized it. "Hey," she echoed, forcing her voice to stay steady. "Thanks for meeting me." "Sure," Kevin said, settling onto the bench beside her. "You sounded serious." Brenda laughed softly, bitter at herself. Yeah, serious. For a moment, they sat in silence, watching a couple walk by holding hands. Brenda's chest tightened. She turned to Kevin, heart pounding. I need to say something, she began, fingers twisting in her scarf. And I'm probably going to sound insane, but I can't not say it. Kevin's brow furrowed slightly, concern flickering in his eyes. Brenda, what's going on? She took a shaky breath. I was selfish. For years. I thought you'd always be there. Like some constant I could lean on while I chased everything else. Kevin's expression softened, but he didn't speak. He let her keep going. I never asked about your life, Brenda said, voice cracking. I never gave you space. I just assumed. And that's awful. You deserved better. Kevin's jaw tightened, but his eyes stayed kind. Brenda. She shook her head, tears stinging. I love you. The words tumbled out, raw and unpolished. I've loved you for so long, and I didn't even realize it because I was so busy trying to control everything. And now, her voice broke. Now you're marrying someone else, and I'm happy for you. I swear I am. But I had to tell you. Not to ruin anything. Just so you know. Silence. Heavy, aching silence. Brenda stared at her hands, afraid to look at him, afraid of the answer she already knew. Finally, Kevin spoke, his voice gentle but firm. Brenda, I loved you too. For a long time. Her breath caught. You did? Kevin nodded, eyes steady. Yeah. From the first coffee in college to every late-night phone call. I waited, hoping you'd see me. But I couldn't keep waiting forever. Brenda swallowed hard, tears slipping free. I'm sorry. I know, Kevin said softly. And I believe you. But I can't undo where I am now. Lexi, she's amazing. She sees me. She makes me feel like I matter. Brenda nodded, even though it felt like her heart was splintering. She's lucky. Kevin smiled faintly. I'm lucky. Brenda laughed through the tears, shaky and hollow. Of course you are. Kevin reached out, covering her hand with his. Warm. Familiar. Final. You're still my friend, Brenda. Always. Brenda managed a smile. Small, broken, but real. Always, she whispered. And for the first time, she understood what always really meant. Not forever, not the way she wanted. Just what was left. Chapter 9. Fallout. Brenda Wilcox had always believed in clean endings. Snip the thread, tie the knot, move on. But this? This was a tangled mess of emotions, and she didn't have a seam ripper big enough to fix it. She spent the next 2 days in what Mia called a grief cocoon, which involved sweatpants, takeout cartons, and a blanket that looked suspiciously like it had been stolen from a hotel. Brenda didn't deny it. She was too busy binge-watching romantic comedies and yelling at the screen. Don't marry him, Julia, she shouted at my best friend's wedding. Fight for him. Be messy. Be bold. Mia, sprawled on the other end of the couch with a tub of ice cream, snorted. You do realize you're rooting for the character who loses, right? Brenda groaned, burying her face in a pillow. Story of my life. By day 3, Mia staged an intervention. She marched into Brenda's studio, ripped the blanket off her, and declared, You're going outside. Brenda blinked at the sunlight like a vampire. Why? Because you smell like despair and soy sauce, Mia said. And because wallowing isn't your brand. Brenda dragged herself to a cafe, where she sat nursing a latte and scrolling through Kevin's wedding hashtag like a masochist. Lexi had posted a picture of their engagement shoot, Kevin in a navy suit, Lexi glowing like happiness personified. Brenda stared at the photo, then muttered, I hate her hair. It's too perfect. Mia leaned over. You mean the hair you tried to copy last week? Brenda glared. Shut up. Later that night, Brenda stood in her studio, surrounded by gowns that suddenly felt hollow. For years, these dresses had been her world, her armor, her proof that she was enough. But now, they looked like distractions. Beautiful, glittering distractions from the truth. She'd been terrified of love because love didn't come with guarantees. She laughed bitterly, talking to the mannequins like they were her therapists. You know what's funny? I thought ambition made me strong. Turns out, it just made me blind. The mannequins didn't answer. They never did. When Mia returned with takeout, Brenda was sketching furiously, tears drying on her cheeks. What's this? Mia asked, peering over her shoulder. A dress, Brenda said. For Lexi. Mia blinked. You're designing for the bride who stole your guy? Brenda shrugged, a shaky smile tugging at her lips. She didn't steal him. I gave him away. And if I can't have Kevin, I can at least make sure she looks perfect. Mia stared at her for a long moment, then handed her a dumpling. You're insane. Brenda laughed softly. I know. Chapter 10. Wedding prep. Brenda had dressed countless brides, but never one who made her heart ache with every stitch. Lexi stood on the pedestal in Brenda's studio, radiant even in muslin. The final silk gown hung nearby, shimmering like moonlight. Brenda adjusted the hem with practiced precision, her hands steady even as her thoughts spun. You're incredible, Lexi said, watching Brenda in the mirror. Kevin told me you were talented, but this is art. Brenda forced a smile. It's just a dress. Lexi shook her head. No, it's more than that. You care. Brenda swallowed hard. I do. For a moment, silence stretched, soft, fragile. Then Lexi spoke again, her voice gentle. Can I ask you something? Brenda's heart thudded. Sure. Are you okay? Lexi's eyes met hers in the mirror, clear and kind. I mean, with all of this. Brenda froze, needle poised midair. Why would you ask that? Lexi smiled faintly. Because I'm not blind. Kevin matters to you. Brenda laughed softly, bitter and broken. He does. Lexi turned, stepping down from the pedestal. I'm not asking for details. I want you to know I'm not here to erase you. You're part of his life. That matters. Brenda blinked hard, fighting tears. You're kind. Lexi shrugged. He deserves honesty. And so do you. Brenda set the needle aside, her voice barely a whisper. I thought I had time. Lexi's expression softened. We all think that. Until we don't. Brenda laughed through the ache, shaky and hollow. You're going to make a beautiful bride. Lexi smiled. Because of you. Brenda nodded, her throat tight. Because of him. When Lexi left, Brenda stood alone in the studio, staring at the gown that would make Kevin's future shimmer. She touched the silk, whispering to the empty room. Goodbye. Chapter 11. The wedding. The chapel smelled faintly of roses and polished wood, sunlight streaming through stained glass in colors too beautiful to look at for long. Brenda sat in the third row, her dress impeccable, her smile practiced. She had perfected the art of looking composed while her insides felt like shattered glass. Lexi was breathtaking. The gown shimmered like liquid moonlight, every stitch a silent confession Brenda had sewn into the seams. When Lexi walked down the aisle, the room seemed to hold its breath. Kevin's face lit up, soft, steady, full of love, and Brenda felt her heart twist so hard she thought it might break in two. This is it, she told herself. The future you thought was waiting for you is standing at the altar, making vows to someone else. The ceremony unfolded like a dream Brenda wasn't invited to. Words floated past her. Honor, cherish, forever, and each one landed like a stone in her chest. She smiled when people turned to look, nodded at the right moments, even laughed softly when the officiant cracked a joke about Kevin's punctuality. Inside, her thoughts were a storm. You had chances. So many chances. Every coffee, every late-night call, every quiet question he asked. He opened the door, and you stayed behind the glass because it felt safe. Because control was easier than vulnerability. She remembered the look on his face when she told him about her failed dates, how she mistook heartbreak for concern. She remembered his voice yesterday in the park. I loved you too. For a long time. And she wondered if that was the cruelest kindness she'd ever been given. When Kevin slid the ring onto Lexi's finger, Brenda's throat burned. She clapped with everyone else, her smile steady, her heart screaming. She watched them kiss, soft, tender, perfect, and thought, that was supposed to be me. Someday. When I was ready. When I had time. But time didn't wait. Neither did Kevin. At the reception, Brenda floated through conversations like a ghost in designer heels. Compliments on the dress. You outdid yourself, Brenda, blurred into background noise. She smiled, thanked them, sipped champagne that tasted like regret. Across the room, Kevin laughed at something Lexi said, his hand resting lightly on her back. Brenda felt the ache again, sharp and deep, but this time it came with clarity. He's happy, really happy, and you love him enough to let that matter more than your own heart. Later, when the music swelled and couples filled the dance floor, Brenda slipped outside. The night air was cool, crisp, and smelled faintly of roses from the garden. She stood under a string of fairy lights, staring at the stars, and whispered a vow, not to Kevin, but to herself. If I'm lucky enough to find someone who sees me, flaws and all, and still wants to have coffee, I'll give love a real chance. No more waiting. No more hiding behind ambition. She laughed softly, bitter and sweet all at once. God, I hope my last chance wasn't kissing his bride, she murmured to the dark. And for the first time in years, Brenda didn't know what her future looked like. But she knew one thing. She wasn't going to waste it. Chapter 12. Brenda's vow. The wedding was over. The music had faded, the laughter had drifted into the night, and Brenda Wilcox was back in her studio. The place that had always felt like home, and now felt like a question. The gown she'd made for Lexi hung on a mannequin, glowing under the soft light like a silent witness. Brenda traced the silk with her fingertips, remembering every stitch. Every moment she swallowed her pride and chose grace over bitterness. She had done the hardest thing. Watched the man she loved promise forever to someone else. And she hadn't fallen apart. Not completely. She'd smiled, toasted, danced when asked. Outwardly calm, inwardly breaking. But now, in the quiet, the cracks showed. Brenda sank onto her stool, staring at the blank page of her sketchbook. For years, this had been her sanctuary, lines and colors, plans and perfection. But tonight, the emptiness felt different. It wasn't failure. It was possibility. She picked up her pencil and wrote, not a design, not a deadline, but a vow. If someone sees me, flaws and all, and still wants to have coffee, I'll give love a real chance. No more waiting. No more hiding behind ambition. She stared at the words, her chest tight but lighter than it had been in weeks. For the first time, Brenda admitted the truth. She had been afraid. Afraid that love would derail her dreams. Afraid that vulnerability meant weakness. But losing Kevin had taught her something brutal and beautiful. Love wasn't a distraction. It was a choice. One she'd never made. Until now. Brenda closed the sketchbook and stood, walking to the window. The city lights glittered like sequins scattered across velvet, alive and endless. Somewhere out there, life was waiting. Not the life she planned, but the one she hadn't dared to imagine. She smiled softly, whispering into the night, here's to coffee. And second chances. And for the first time in years, Brenda didn't feel like she was running out of time. She felt like she was ready. Epilogue. Coffee and second chances. The cafe was quiet, the kind Brenda liked. Warm light, soft jazz, the hum of conversations that didn't demand her attention. She sat by the window, sketchbook open, a latte steaming beside her. For once, the pages weren't filled with gowns or deadlines. Just words. Promises to herself. She had kept the vow she wrote weeks ago. If someone sees me, flaws and all, and still wants to have coffee, I'll give love a real chance. Brenda smiled faintly, tracing the sentence with her fingertip. It felt less like a dream now, more like a door she was willing to open. Excuse me. A voice said, warm and unfamiliar. Brenda looked up. He was tall, with a smile that reached his eyes and a book tucked under his arm. Is this seat taken? Brenda blinked at the empty chair across from her. Oh no. Go ahead. He set the book down, The Art of Simplicity, and grinned. I'm Alex. Brenda, she said, her voice steady, surprising even herself. Alex nodded toward her sketchbook. Designer. Brenda laughed softly. Guilty. That's impressive, he said, genuine curiosity in his tone. Mind if I ask what you're working on? Brenda glanced at the page, the vow, a blank space waiting for something new, and smiled. Something different. Alex smiled back, easy and warm. Sounds like a good story. Brenda felt the weight in her chest ease, just a little. She closed the sketchbook, wrapped her hands around her coffee, and thought, maybe this is what a second chance looks like. Not perfect, not planned, just possible. And for the first time in a long time, Brenda didn't feel like she was waiting. She felt like she was ready.